Hello and welcome back to another Indie Network, the monthly chat for indie authors, sponsored by Emergence and Expo North and hosted by me, author and self-publishing consultant Ben Galley. This month I'm very pleased to be joined by somebody I've known and worked with on and off for quite a few years now, a person who has a great list of achievements behind her, the inimitable Orna Ross, as well as being named one of the top 100 most influential people in publishing by The Bookseller. Orna is a multi-book author of fiction and a range of advice books called Go Creative, as well as releasing books with Penguin in 2005 and 2008. She has self-published the rest of her titles and recently won the Carousel Prize for her book Her Secret Rose. Orna also used to be a literary agent, also a poet, but the main reason I'm inviting her, we've got her on the Indie Network this month, is that in 2012 she launched the now internationally known Alliance of Independent Authors, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Orna, welcome.
Hi, Ben. Gosh.
So many accolades.
I've been around a long time, haven't I?
Well, it's great. I mean, it's very impressive, and that's why I wanted to get you on here to chat to our authors and hopefully give us some advice. But yeah, you've been busy. It's been tough to track you down. You were flying all over the place, doing lots of courses and teaching and training and organising ALLi.
Yeah, always busy, always happy to be busy. And of course, self-publishing and indie authordom, it's so exciting, so many opportunities. And yeah, so I feel like my feet haven't touched the ground actually in the last 12 months or more. Yeah.
It's good. Lots of success. I mean, well done on the prize, the Carousel Prize, because that was quite recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's a kind of a couple of weeks ago. Yes, delighted with that. It's a really nice indie prize, and delighted, of course, to see the novel kind of getting a little bit of recognition because. Yeah, I'm just really keen to get that story about Yeats and Maud gone out into the world. I think it's such a great story, so every little helps.
Brilliant stuff. Well, let's start with that then. I mean, tell us a bit more about yourself as an author and, of course, a poet, sort of as a creative, and then we can sort of move on to the business side.
Yeah, well, I always wrote, I'm your typical kind of person who read the back of the cornflakes packet. I couldn't get enough reading. I grew up in a very small village in rural Ireland, and books were my window on the world, windows of wonder, and, it's through books that I knew how other people lived, and so as soon as I kind of was able to, I was starting to write myself, and I worked as a journalist first for many years, but I always wanted to write fiction, and then I was coming up to a significant birthday, and I thought, well, I better get a novel written, so I did. Then I had to get it published. This was before self-publishing, and that was a bit of a marathon, but I happily made it happen after 54 rejections on number 55. Wow. Penguin took it on. Yeah, I know. You had to be very stubborn in those days to get a publishing contract, usually anyway, especially for fiction, especially for something that wasn't, as mine wasn't, very easily kind of genre categorized. So that was fine, but actually Penguin wanted to shoehorn my books into a genre which was very popular at that time called chick lit, and I didn't feel it fitted, and so we had lots of kind of creative differences, I think they're called.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, so by the time the second book was kind of finished, it was a fabulous 2-book contract, and I'll always be grateful to Penguin for that. And they did lots of things for my books and my career as a novelist that were fantastic, and that I could never have done by myself. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm ungrateful. No, I'm not. I'm very grateful for that. But when self-publishing came along, I initially just put out a small pamphlet of poetry because I'm not very technical, and I thought, will I even be able to do this? And then I found it was actually quite easy. If you can send an email, really, you can upload a book. It's hardly more complicated than that. But people bought it, and that really shocked me. It was back in the days when it was easier to, in fairness, to sell books on Kindle than it is now. There were far fewer books around, but the strangers parted with money for poetry was just seemed amazing. So I thought, I'm going to try and get my rights back from Penguin and see if I can. So I had worked, as you mentioned in your introduction, as a literary agent, and I had put in a very good rights reversion clause. And so after a lot of toing and froing, eventually did get the rights back.
That's
and
great.
Did self-publish. So it was brilliant for me because I was able to put the books out exactly as I originally had envisaged them. So, the kind of covers that I felt would have worked. And because when they were published by Penguin, I got an awful lot of readers who said to me, I never would have bought your book except somebody told me I should read it, because the cover, I just wouldn't have known it was that. And I got other readers who bought it because that cover was on it, and they were disappointed. It wasn't what they were expecting.
That's
it was,
a shame.
a lot of them said, no, it was too complicated. I couldn't follow the chopping of time backwards and forwards, and things like that are a little bit more challenging. They just weren't expecting that because of the way the book had been presented to them. So to put them out there as I thought they would, I was always interested in building a smaller community of readers who understood what I was trying to do. That was much more important to me than trying to hit every kind of reader going. I think you begin small and build up, not begin big and then fall apart, it was great for me because I was able to do it the way I had originally envisaged it, and readers did like it, and I did get exactly the kind of connection with readers that I had hoped for when I set out to be a fiction writer. So I love self-publishing myself. I just really, and then I just became an evangelist, I suppose, for self-publishing because there was an awful lot of misinformation going around, and I looked for an association to join, and I couldn't find the kind of association that I felt should be there. So seeing as it was all about indie and, if it's not there, go make it happen, I thought, oh, all right then, let's try this. So we launched at London Book Fair 2012. You were there, actually.
I was indeed, yeah.
Yes, came up afterwards. You were only about 12 then or something.
Yeah. I still remember it very clearly. It was a great launch. It really was. I mean, I think I was immediately interested because of the reason you just said. There was no, indie authors community. There was no sort of organisation that officially represented us at that time, and that was definitely what drew me to ALLi at the start.
Yeah, and it was a great launch. It was a great moment. I think it was a moment in the UK where people, because we launched at London Book Fair and we kind of said, here we are, we're not going away. You better start taking notice because it's an important movement and so on. You at that time, I think, were the youngest self-published author in the UK or something.
I think so. Yeah, that was because it was 2 years after I'd first launched. Pretty much a year, like actually being in it and driving myself forward and actually trying to make a career out of it. But yeah, feels like ages ago now.
It does. We're all hardened old, wizened old indies now.
But I mean, 4 years, it's not a long time. And ALLi's accomplished a huge amount in that time. I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit more about, you've told us how it started and the genesis for it, but do you want to tell us a bit more about what services ALLi provides, how it's structured, how it works?
Yeah, well, it's grown, very, as you say, very quickly and beyond anything that was envisaged for it in that first kind of launch. So we essentially are led by what our members' needs are. So at first, I think it was very much, that, what I said a moment ago, letting people know that we were there. And, and that by people, I mean everybody from readers to trade publishers to libraries to bookstores, So we always were for the kind of indie that says, yes, I'm an independent, but I know that means I collaborate with other people to make good books. So we were always for the kind of indie author who, gets the book edited, works with the design help they need and so on. So a collaborator, because we very much believe that a good book is a collaborative effort, and getting books to readers is the same thing, so that we believe indies should be in the libraries, they should be at all the events, they should be eligible to enter all competitions. There shouldn't be a distinction in, how the book is published. It's irrelevant to the reader once it reaches a certain standard, and should be irrelevant to everybody in the industry. But of course that still remains a major issue. We're still kind of banging that drum. We still have an Open Up to Indie Authors campaign, and we will do until we have a level playing field. But we do lots of other things as well. There's legal help for people who, have a contract or something that's proving difficult, or perhaps they don't understand the terms of some of the self-publishing contracts, or they're trying to get out of a trade publishing contract or whatever. We can help with all sorts of legal issues.
That's very useful.
Yeah, we run a watchdog desk which analyzes the services that are out there and draws up a ratings page, so that an indie can go and check and see whether a particular service that they're thinking of working with is actually an ethical and good service for authors, or one of those many services that is actually exists just to rip people off.
Yeah, I remember that very well.
Yes, I know that's something that gets you as irate as it gets us.
Absolutely.
What else do we do? Obviously, lots of advocacy within the industry. As I mentioned there, we have an advice centre, which is full of, we blog. We have a daily blog, advice blog post, and the centre then kind of pulls together guidebooks and different pillar posts that, indie authors need stuff you need to know, and because it's from other authors and it does go through our filtering system, it's 100% trustworthy. So there's an awful lot of advice out there that is kind of very spurious, and yes, and that can be because it's put out by vested interests who are deliberately muddying the waters, or it can just be that people think they're being helpful, but actually they don't know what they're saying, or it could be Chinese whispers kind of thing. Around Amazon, you get a lot of this, Amazon reviews or Amazon policy generally, people misinterpret it and then it goes out onto the internet, it's taken as gospel truth, and then it's turned into something else. So we have a filter system to make sure that anything that goes out from us is 100% accurate, or else is opinion and clearly labelled as such, So lots of advice. And we also have our Facebook forum where anybody can come on and ask a question and get an answer. We also have a Q&A facility once a month whereby Joanna Penn from the Creative Pen and I answer people's questions, member questions online in a live Google Hangout. So that's kind of all the advice and information and knowledge and wisdom of the group is shared. So we call it kind of working together for each other. And the members are incredibly generous with their time for each other. I mean, it makes it a joy every day to see what goes on in the closed forum. It's really, really fabulous. And we have a literary agent for our professional members, are people who have sold more than 50,000 books in the last 2 years. And we have a literary agent arrangement with Toby Mundy Associates, which is part of also allied to the Ed Victor Group. And that handles TV rights and translation rights mainly for our professional members. And that's a non-exclusive arrangement, which is very unique in publishing, whereby Toby will actually represent authors who have other agent representation, but maybe not for their indie books, or maybe not for particular projects or whatever. Yeah. So that's also working well. And lots of other things as well. We have 21 benefits listed on our website. So there's at least 21 good reasons to join.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's one of the things that I found very useful is, like you said, the closed forum, and the fact that it's so vibrant and so alive all the time with advice and people sharing their progress and asking questions and things like that. And that was one of the things that I thought, because that was one of the core aspects of ALLi when it first started, was that Facebook group. group. But that's one of the things that's just always stuck in my mind and constantly, like you said, brings a smile to my face.
Yeah.
Whenever you scroll through it. And I think that's one of the important things that I want to focus on in this chat is the idea of community and how important that is to an indie author. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, really.
Oh, it's 100% vital because, an indie, it's hard work, and none of us who do it would argue with that. First of all, you've got to write a great book, then you've got to publish it well, and then you've got to get it out to the reader, and perhaps take on issues around licensing your rights, your translation rights, and your TV and film rights, and everything else, everything that a publisher does. You're thinking about doing for yourself, okay, with help, assistance, maybe hiring assistants or whatever, but essentially you're the creative director of the entire thing. And so, your community, the author community effectively replaces the publisher, the agent, and all the other supports that a trade published author would have. And it's incredibly important, and I would argue it's much, much more useful than having a publisher or an agent. Now, not everybody would agree with me on that, but I really do believe so, having experienced it both ways. As a published author, you are one of many. As an agent represented author, you're one of many, but with other authors, you are just you, and they are that, and you're all peer. It's peer group stuff, and you all share the same interests, and I think it's just so important. And I think that what makes our forum work very well is that it is heavily moderated and it is advice driven only. So I think a lot of indie forums and communities fall down because they become vehicles for self-promotion or authors patting each other on the back and saying, oh, you're great, or the opposite, mopping up each other's tears. So ours is not quite like that. It's very much, if it isn't advice, it isn't there, in short. So it's quite heavily moderated, and so it's kept as an advice driven forum. But I think it's also down to the quality of the community, and a community is only as strong as its members, all of its members. And they are one incredible bunch of authors. Absolutely. They are so impressive. It knocks me down. They're so bright and talented, and as I said, super generous with their information and hardworking. It's just so admirable to see the kind of, I think it's a real surprise to people that so many authors actually do love the process of publishing. Oh, yeah. It was always assumed that writers just wanted to sit in their ivory tower and throw their novels out the window when they were done, down to a waiting team and get on with the next one. And there are lots of writers like that, but there are also lots of writers who are not like that. And they get on very well together. Joanna and I were doing a day course on Saturday, and one of the attendees of the course said, I've just had the most incredible experience today because I have just found my tribe. I've been, part of writing groups for my whole life, but I never felt like I fitted in until today. Yeah. That was my experience when I set up ALLi, and to see so many other authors who actually approached the whole thing like I did. Mm-hmm. I always felt slightly out of, even though I taught writing groups and was part of writing groups and taught creative writing at university and all of that kind of stuff. Still, until self-publishing came along, I didn't feel that I had found my tribe, and I think a lot of us feel that way.
I think tribe is a very powerful word. I think very, very apt in terms of indies, because dare I say there has been a bit of snobbery between the traditional and the indie world over the last couple of years, since self-publishing really arrived on the scene. And a lot of it quite harmless, but it's quite interesting how there is that divide between and less so, but there is that divide between the self-publishing and traditional world, the us and them. But with ALLi, it's because, again, you said the quality there, the quality is there in the authors and, the professionally minded authors in the group. And yet it doesn't seem to be an us and them. It's more of a, okay, well, self-publishing works for me, but traditional might still have certain opportunities or benefits to it. And so you keep an open mind. And I've definitely seen that in the group, that it's more of a hybrid feel and less us and them.
Definitely, without a doubt. I mean, a huge number of our members publish both ways and continue to do so. So we'll use a trade publisher for a particular project because they think a trade publisher will get it out there better than they will, and will retain rights to another project because they feel, no, I'll do this one better than they would, than anyone else would, or this one's so dear to my heart, nobody's getting their fingers on it,
Yeah.
So and I think that's great. I think that's the way it ought to be. And, us and them never made sense to me, possibly because I had to, even though I was turning, and it would take a lot now. I would have to get a very good offer before I would consider going down the trade route. But certainly in terms of access to bookstores globally, I don't think an indie can do that as well as trade publishing yet. So there are things happening in the background that should be announced in 2017 that I think will change that. But
that was cryptic.
I can't say any more than that right now, unfortunately.
That's
but
cool.
I'm buzzing to tell, but I can't.
Is that an ALLi thing, or is that just a...
No, it's not an ALLi thing.
Oh, wow.
It's something that's happening with one of the services that I think is going to make a very big difference to the possibility of bookstore distribution for indies. Because the problem with bookstore distribution for indies at the moment is that it's very difficult to be competitive price-wise. So with POD particularly. So if you put a book out there, which lots of our members do, it's at least £1 or £2 or $2 or $3 more, costing more than an equivalent trade published book, and so it's uncompetitive. Now that doesn't mean it doesn't sell, because lots of our members do, but the whole bookstore distribution model is not set up with indies in mind. It was set up with trade publishing in mind, and it operates from a completely different business model. So bringing those two together is challenging, and it's a challenge that nobody has cracked yet. But I am hoping that in 2017 we'll see that change. That's all I can say for now.
Well, you've heard it here first.
Yes, exactly.
Possibly, maybe not. No, I'm looking forward to finding out what that is.
If it happens, yes.
Yeah, cool stuff. I mean, talking about service providers, because a lot of the work that, I've been involved with ALLi on the Watchdog desk for a little while myself, and it's quite an interesting quite an interesting sort of facet of ALLi, because you are taking on these providers, or at least, making sure these providers are doing what they say they're doing. And, there have been some, quite big providers out there that have got a really, really bad reputation that ALLi have taken on, face to face. So, I mean, did you want to tell us a bit more about the issues that ALLi tackles, or maybe some of the, maybe not naming the providers, but some of the types of providers that you tackle and confront and make sure, they're actually being reputable to authors?
Yeah. This has been a huge part of our work, and is very time consuming and labour consuming. As you know, you were involved for a while, and we've had a number of people on the Watchdog desk, and it's growing all the time because this work is very demanding and time consuming. And I think you need a campaigning heart, to do it and to go after it. But it's really important, it seems to me, because we are only as good as our services, and also there are some really bad actors in this space, and there are people who are literally, as we are talking here, setting up business purely to exploit authors because they just see. And authors, for a group of people who depend on research and they really are not very good at looking out for themselves. There are a lot. They're a very trusting group in one segment of them, and then, of course, there's a particular very large company that has lots of different imprints that actually specialises in going after vulnerable groups, like people who want to write a family story for their grandchildren, or somebody who's burning to write about their experience of, immigration or torture, or, really their life story when they've had a very harrowing life. And essentially they know exactly the buttons to press to get a lot of money out of these people. Yes, they will produce a book, but that's where it begins and ends. And of course, the people are going there expecting that their book will be read by somebody else, and they're really not set up to do that in any way. So, as well as sort of having a listing of good and bad services, we also produce an annually updated guide called Choosing a Self-Publishing Service, which not only goes into some of the details around these services, and again, you were a contributor to that book a couple of years ago.
Indeed, great honour to be involved in that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, you started the whole thing, and lots of the things that you put into the original first edition are still there. But it changes very rapidly. Yes, it changes very rapidly, this arena. So it's a different publication now again in 2017, even than it was in 2016. So the thing about it, though, and the reason I'm mentioning it for your listeners, is that it, as well as listing a number of the problem people and also a number of the very good people, it teaches you how to evaluate any service yourself, so that you can tell at a glance really whether you're in good hands or not. So I think it's worth it from that point of view alone. And that guidebook is, like all our guides, free to members, but I think it's only $4.99 or something to non-members.
$4.99 on Kindle. We'll get a link up to that, because I think it was a great honour to be involved in one of the first iterations, if not the first. But
it was the first.
It was the first. Yeah. Yes. Again, feels like ages.
It does, doesn't it?
But yeah, I mean, it was a great pleasure doing that, mainly because of the amount of services out there that people should know about, whether they're bad or they're good. And it was great to really sort of put it into a guide. But yeah, we'll get a link up to that, because I think it's really, really useful, especially annually, to check through and find out what's new, what to look out for, if you don't hear it through a grapevine, like, the ALLi forum or something similar. So yeah, we'll get a link up to that.
Great.
It brings me on to one of my last things, because I mean, you've written a lot of guides, because your Go Creative series, it's expansive. You've got a huge amount of titles in there, and you've written a great many other things as well alongside that. So if you had to drill it down, this is going to be a tough question, but if you had to drill all that down, I'll tell you what, I'll give you two. Maybe one major tip for creativity, because obviously that is a huge part of what you do, but also one top self-publishing tip. If you had to choose one each, what would they be?
Oh boy, you're really putting me on the spot here. One tip, it's so difficult.
I'll allow you a very general tip, like be professional.
They're probably both connected, and it might sound a bit woolly, and it might sound a bit like it's not pragmatic advice exactly, but I think the most important thing is to trust yourself and to give it a go. So to leap, we have this kind of phrase in the creativist club thing that lighten up, let go, and leap in is kind of the core of creativity. So you've got to kind of throw off, to some degree, what you're told is the way to do things, and find your own way. And that sounds easy and is very difficult. Actually, it's very challenging, because we're brought up in a school system and then a workplace system that kind of tells you to fit in and to use your analytical and rational mind, and not to trust your gut and all those kinds of things. And if you want to succeed in either self-publishing and because self-publishing is highly creative, I think it's the most creative way to be an author. To succeed in those, you have to trust your intuition. So the indie authors that I see doing very well are the people who either emulate very closely the trade publishing model, except by doing a lot more books. So they are what you'd call the high volume book producers who feed their audience, and they don't blog, they don't have websites hardly. Well, they do have a website and a newsletter, but beyond that, they do no marketing. They just produce books, and the books themselves market themselves and so on. But outside of that, it's about building a tribe and building a community of people who get what you do. So it's about making your passion, whatever it is that you are trying to convey in your writing, turning that into a sort of a mission as to what you're trying to do for the reader, and understanding where that connects, if you like, the connection between the passion and the mission, and building your community around that. And doing that in interesting and exciting sorts of ways, I think, is where the success comes. So just an example from my own books last year was the 150th anniversary of the poet W.B. Yeats' death, or birth, I should say. And I was writing this book about him and the woman who inspired so much of his poetry. And I just decided to do a crowdfunded special edition of his book and my book in a replica of his 1898 first edition. And when I had that idea first, I thought, I'd love to do that. That'd be super cool, and very kind of naughty to daring to put myself in the same book as this man I absolutely revered growing up, and still do in loads of ways. And as a writer, I think he's just superlative. And, lowly little me in there with him just seemed like such a daring thing to do, that I felt I wanted to do it. But I thought, well, how could I do it? How could I afford the production values that I would need? Because it was a very special edition that he had done with gold leaf binding and so on. And I thought, I'll throw it out to people, and if enough people are interested and the crowdfunder works, then I'll do it, and if not, no harm done. And it was fantastic, because the crowdfunder did work. It really tickled loads of people's imagination the way it did mine. But what I'm getting round to is the community thing. It really drew together the community around the work that I was doing, around the novel that I was doing, in a way that just putting it out on Kindle wouldn't have done. So, I think you were talking about community earlier on. If you're going to build a community, then you need to kind of dig down deep into yourself and find out what you're all about, and then just put that out there. And it's excruciating at first, to be honest. It's really hard to do that, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the more you get back. And then once you begin to build that community, that's when things really take off. So it's kind of a roundabout answer to your question.
No, I think it's fantastic. It's brilliant advice. And I think it's definitely something that I'd struggled with when I started out. The worry can build up and up. I mean, obviously, because your passion is there, you worry about either letting your passion down, or just not achieving it, or doing it wrong, or a host of other worries that you might have. And I think it's just perfectly natural, but there is a point where you have to say, no more. I'm going to throw myself out there, as you said, and get it done. And I think, brilliant advice. Thank you very much, Orna.
Pleasure. And of course, the worry never goes away. We'll still, and you never achieve it, do you, fully? But it's enough to be going on with.
It's the curse of being a creative in general. You just have so much passion. That's cool. Well, I just want to say thank you again. It's been great having you on the Indie Network. I think from sneaky news tidbits to obviously solid advice, but also a really inspiring story as well about what you've achieved and how and why you started ALLi. No, it's been really great having you on.
Thanks so much, Ben. Total pleasure.
Cool. Where can we find you then? You as an author and of course ALLi as well. Where can we find those?
Yeah, as an author, it's ornaross.com, and for the Alliance, it is allianceindependentauthors.org. We're a non-profit organisation, so .org.
Brilliant stuff. Excellent. Well, make sure we'll get those links up as well for the listeners. And thank you once again, Orna. Been a pleasure. And hopefully you can carry on being busy. Maybe get a little bit of chill time around Christmas.
Thank you. I'll do that for you.
Thanks, Orna. I'll catch you soon.
Ben. Take care. Bye. Cheers. Now.